It's the off season, which means it's time for lists and making people angry. Grossi Posse Packer Nation. Welcome to an episode of Packcast, the podcast where you don't have to be Packers fan, but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom. I love doing these lists so much because people get so upset. And I'm like, he was a 7 instead of a 6. It's okay. We're all gonna be okay. Grossi. And today, as we are heading into the depths of the off season, for the 6 people who are watching, is because they're like, wait a minute, NFL, Tom, this is the downtime. There's no NFL talk during this time. No, there's NFL talk every freaking fracking day. What we're going to do is we're going to go through, look at the top 10 QBs for today's episode. In the future, we're going to do the top 10 running backs. We're going to do the top 10 wide receivers. We're going to do the top 10 tight ends. And before we get into anything, a little bit of a caveat here. These are the top 10 QBs, in my opinion, heading into 2022. This doesn't mean that they're going to have the best 2022 season. This doesn't mean that they're not the greatest of all time. This just means heading into this season where I think they are ranked as of right this second. In addition, to make it a little bit more interesting this season, one Brandon Perna of That's Good Sports is also going to be doing his top 10 list, which is going to drop today, and then we're going to compare, talk about it on Friday on GPS, and probably wind up ranking all 32 starting QBs. Before we get to the rankings, I want to do a big shout and thank you to some brand new patrons and YouTube members, and I apologize, it's been a while since I did one of these just random desk videos, because I had to knock out those division predictions all at the same day, so I apologize if you've been waiting a little bit. For over on the Patreon side things, we got Golden, we got In the Hole, maybe he's just a golf fan, and Sports Talk Network. A big shout out and thank you to you. And over on the YouTube side of things, joining the Grossi Posse Plus, we got Matt, we got DJ Broadhurst, we got Christian Martinez upgrading, and muffins for all. I would have preferred cupcakes, but to each their own. A big shout out and thank you to you all. So with all of that being said, let's get to it. Before I get to number 10, I feel so bad. I did so much research and looking up stats and analytics, and I had Derek Carr at 10, but literally at the last second, I moved him out of the top 10. So Raiders fans, expect him to see on there. He's my number 11, okay? He's there at number 11. It was just because the guy who I'm going to place at number 10 definitely had a worse season than Derek Carr last year, but he was injured, and taking a look at his career, I just think he's been a little bit more careful with the football than Derek Carr, and he's been a little bit more productive. So because of that, I'm sorry, Raiders fans, Carr is underrated, but just outside that top 10, and with my number 10, I got Russell Let's Ride Wilson. Wilson having himself a tough year last year. Still, though, out of all the QBs on this list, ranked second in the least amount of interceptions thrown at 6. But injury, right? Hurt in his finger. He was out for a little bit, came back and got shut out by the Packers. Yeah, we did that. But Wilson still having a pretty productive season, 64.8% completion rating, over 3,100 yards, 25 touchdowns. Russell Wilson getting out of Seattle and going to Denver, where I think many are anticipating a big jump from Wilson. A lot of that's going to be because of Nathaniel Hackett. Yes, they have weapons like Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton, and I think that he'll do well with those, but he also had great receivers in Seattle when you have guys like freaking DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. What I think his success is really going to be contingent on is how Nathaniel Hackett is going to utilize Russell Wilson, because we've seen it plenty of times. Russell Wilson, when he's allowed to cook, does pretty freaking fracking well. Pete Carroll, more of a traditional guy, hard mouth football, and it's like, hey, we got a strong defense. On top of that, we got a power running game. The Broncos, they could utilize a similar thing, but I think you're going to see a little bit more of a high-flying offense. This is a guy who also coordinated with Aaron Rodgers, and Rodgers saw plenty of success. So I think Russell Wilson's going to have a very good year this year, but even though he had a down year last season, I could in good faith put Derek Carr ahead of him, because you just need to look before last season and see that Russell Wilson is still a damn good player. Then number 9, you got Matthew Stafford. Stafford, he was another one. He was a fringe guy. I didn't know if I was going to put him on the list. Threw a lot of interceptions, but taking into account how he played with Detroit and the fact that he won a Super Bowl in his first year with the Rams. Yes, the Rams were really built to go and win a Super Bowl, but I don't think you can take that away from Stafford. He had some ugly interceptions, and that's the thing that I would harp on, but Matthew Stafford is and has been a great football player. Number 3 in passing yards, number 2 in TDs, 8.1 yards per attempt. That's second on this list. 67.2% completion rating, 17 interceptions. You definitely want to see that go down. But Matthew Stafford, when it came down to it, most of the time was very, very clutch. You look at the game-winning drive that he led for the Rams in the Super Bowl, connecting with Cooper Kupp. It also helped that he had Cooper Kupp, but OBJ also significantly helping. You have major running backs out with injury for the majority of the season, so they really kind of couldn't fall back on that run game. However, they have a good defense, they have a good coach, and they have a very solid offense. So I think that Matthew Stafford was definitely in a better position than he was in Detroit, but I don't think, you really can take anything away from that guy because he has shown year in and year out that he's a really damn good football player. I still think that he's in the top 10, and while his interceptions are a bit high on this list, I think that his clutch nature and the fact that he still is in the top 5 in 2 of these categories, it gives him a top 10 spot. Number 8, you got Dak Prescott. Let the anger begin. Let it begin. Let it flow through you, because I already know people are going to have issue with that. But listen, folks, there is nobody on God's green earth that likes to make fun of the Cowboys more than Tom Grossi. Did I just refer to myself in the third person? Oh my God, that's something that a Cowboys fan would do. But you gotta give Dak credit where credit is due. Playoffs, I mean, they don't see it too much, but playoffs, yeah, not really so great. But regular season, Dak Prescott is freaking fracking good. Top 5 in touchdowns, interceptions, least amount of interceptions, and completion rating in all of these lists. And Dak, while he did have really good receivers last year, you had Zeke who was struggling, you had Mike McCarthy as your coach, they had losses along that offensive line, which is why they're drafting an offensive lineman in the first round this year. So I think that Dak, with what he's had to work with, I think he's been able to excel. The numbers look really good. This year's going to be interesting for Dak because you have no Amari Cooper. Again, we'll see what the hell is going to go on with Zeke. Hopefully their offensive line is a little bit better. But I gotta say, Dak is usually the consistent one. He's putting up insane numbers. Hell, before he got hurt a while back, he was having one of the greatest seasons in terms of yards. So I think that Dak Prescott is a top 10 guy. I know we like to make fun of the Cowboys, and rightfully so, but I think it's really hard to deny his talent. Then at number 7, you got Lamar Jackson. Wait, this isn't the running back list. Are we done with that joke? Because I feel like we've been done with that joke for quite some time. Lamar Jackson had a bit of a rough season last year. Besides getting injured, his entire team spent the majority of the season in the hospital. Everybody on IR. They really didn't have running backs past August. So yeah, the Ravens, they had a tough time last year. Lamar Jackson, 12 games played last season, had over 2,800 yards, completed 64.4% of his passes, 16 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. I had 133 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. So you look at that and you're like, Tom, that's really not so good. And I agree. However, if you also go back and look at the games in which Lamar Jackson played, there were times where literally his receivers could not catch anything. And 2, he was the reason that they were winning football games. Not like, oh yeah, wins are not QB stats. I agree with that. But this guy was literally responsible for them to be as successful as they were last year. And I know the Ravens didn't blow anybody's minds, but considering how many injuries they had, they were lucky to honestly win 8 games. Throw on top of that, that Lamar Jackson got sacked 38 times last year. Basically, all of the odds were against him. But if you look at previous seasons, obviously he won an MVP, but the guy is a freaking good football player. I think that he's definitely a top 10 QB, and while last year will be very disappointing, a healthy Ravens team this year, watch out, and I think that's going to be led by not only a great run game, but Lamar Jackson. Then number 6, and if this guy was in the league for any longer, he'd probably be in my top 5. You got Joey B, Joe Burrow. Guy, in his first full season in the NFL, Obviously, his rookie year has a catastrophic injury. Before that, looks really good, and then comes out this year and is one of the best QBs in football and helps take his team to a freaking Super Bowl. He was number 6 in total yards, 8.9 yards per attempt, which leads all of the guys on this list. 70.4% completion rating, which is number 1 out of every single person on this list. 34 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, and he's only in his second year. Joe Burrow has proven that he is the real deal, and considering all of the talent that the Bengals have brought in during free agency and the draft, I think that they will 100% be contending for another Super Bowl appearance this season. The AFC is stacked, but Joe Burrow, I think, has the poise, he has the pocket presence, and hell, you can sack him 9 times in a playoff game, and he'll still find a way to beat you. There's a lot of talent on that team, especially on the offense, when it comes to receivers, when it comes to running backs, but Joe Burrow is something special, and don't be surprised if next season he's in the top 5. Number 5, you got one, Justin Herbert. That's right, Herbie fully loaded. Another one, his second year in the NFL, has the luxury of having 2 seasons, Offensive Rookie of the Year. But Justin Herbert continued just lighting up the league this year. You go back and you watch that game against the Raiders and just 4th down after 4th down conversion. The guy is freaking amazing. 2nd in yards, 3rd in TDs, so he's top 5 in 2 major categories. 65.9% completion rating, 38 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. Now, I think you can make an argument for Justin Herbert to actually be below Joe Burrow, but I love the consistency that Herbert has shown from his rookie year and also his sophomore year. I think that the Chargers, they have it all in front of them. Sometimes it's their coaching that is going to get them in the way, or it's going to be injuries or flags, but I think Justin Herbert is 100% their franchise guy. I think he is right on the cusp of a top 5 QB spot. I gave him the number 5 spot here, and I think that that guy is going to continue to impress. Number 4, you got Josh Allen. Josh Allen, the athlete who just keeps on getting better, and he's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. There was a part of me that almost put Josh Allen a little bit lower, but I just think the evolution of Josh Allen, and you see him getting better and better, and sometimes that's with no run game until the very end of the season. I think he's warranted a top 5 spot. I think he's there at number 4. And just as an example, just look at what the guy was able to do in the AFC divisional round against the Chiefs. Over 4,400 yards, 63.3% completion rating, which I would like to be a little bit higher, 36 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. Again, no real run game to speak of. They do have the luxury of having a pretty damn good defense. They're probably going to be the best defense in football this coming season. Josh Allen is a freaking trooper. He could put the team on his back, has done so on numerous occasions, and I think that Josh Allen 100% is a top 5 QB in football. And I think behind like the golden 3, he's right there. Number 3, you got Patrick Mahomes. Might upset people that he's sitting at number 3, but I think the 2 guys in front of him, I mean, not only have they been doing it for longer, but they're showing that they're pretty freaking fracking consistent. But Mahomes, number 4 in yards and touchdowns, had 13 interceptions last year, 66.3% completion rating. And the fact is, they struggled for like the first half of the season. People were crapping all over Mahomes. He really wasn't playing well. There was interceptions. You look at that Washington game, for example. It really wasn't good. And then you start to see flashes of the old Patrick Mahomes, in which he was like, okay, never mind. We're going to go and start to win some football games here. Now, this upcoming season, lost Tyreek Hill. That could be a big old problem. Yes, they got MVS to try and get that speed. They have Juju Smith-Schuster, which I know a lot of people are hesitant about. But I think Patrick Mahomes is still that guy. He was this close from going to another Super Bowl, would make their 3rd in a row. And I think it's going to be a really big year for Patrick Mahomes because obviously the Chiefs threw all of the money at him. And I think that if you're starting a franchise, Patrick Mahomes is like top 3 on your list today. So we'll see if Mahomes is able to kind of rise to the occasion without one of his big weapons. But I have no doubt that he probably will and will still be in the top 5 next year. Number 2, and I know I'm going to get hate for it. I'm going to be called a homer, but it's fine. Tom frickin' Brady. You were supposed to stay away. Sorry. Number 1 in yards, number 1 in touchdowns, 6th in interceptions, had a phenomenal year last year, would have won the MVP if it wasn't for Aaron Rodgers. And I know there's going to be Brady stans who are going to say that Brady should have won MVP last year, but I think Rodgers was just way too efficient with the football for them to give it to Brady. But that takes nothing away from him whatsoever. They lost Antonio Brown because he decided to take his shirt off and run off the field at MetLife. They lost Chris Godwin to injury, but he still was amazing. They almost came back and beat the Rams in that divisional game. The 12 interceptions, a bit high. However, I think Tom Brady is still a freaking amazing football player. I don't know how he does it at this point, but he just seems to be getting better with age. Hell, he even seems to be faster with age, which is just gross. They won't have Antonio Brown. They won't have Gronk this year unless Brady winds up just calling him in September going, come on back. And he's like, okay. But I think Tom Brady is a phenomenal quarterback, and if Aaron Rodgers didn't have the year that he did last year, he would be number 1. And with that being said, number 1, and I'll get called a homer for it, but the guy is the back-to-back MVP for a reason. Number 1, Aaron frackin' Rodgers. Number 6 in touchdowns, below Brady. However, number 1 in interceptions with only 4 picks the entire year. That's a third of what Brady threw last year. He's number 3 in completion rating. Brady wasn't even in the top 5 there. More yards per attempt than Tom Brady. And he did all this without his star left tackle, Elton Jenkins, getting injured this season. He did it with a makeshift offensive line and really Davante Adams. Hell, even Aaron Jones went down, who's a great pass catcher for us, even though he's a running back. What I'm saying is Aaron Rodgers for these past 2 seasons has had a resurgence. And I'm saying this as he's one of the greatest QBs of all time, and he was still playing well before that, but these past 2 seasons, he has just been on another level. The fact that you have all these amazing quarterbacks and he's still winning back-to-back MVPs is really just speaking not only to Matt LaFleur and the system that they have there, but just Aaron Rodgers' ability to adapt like Tom Brady and still be a phenomenal player as he begins to age. I'm not going to sit here and say that Aaron Rodgers is going to be the best quarterback this season, because I think that there's going to be a lot of challenges to that. Nathaniel Hackett leaving, Luke Getsy leaving. On top of that, MVS gone, Davante Adams gone. There's definitely going to be some challenges and potentially some growing pains. But I don't know how you can sit here and say Aaron Rodgers is not a top 2 QB in the league heading into this season. And in my opinion, he's number 1, and he has the accolades to prove it. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. Where would you rank yours? I told you Derek Carr would be 11 here. Kyler Murray would probably be 12. Kirk Cousins probably sitting at 13. But check out Brandon Perna's list, and then come on Friday to GPS at 11 a.m. Eastern, and you let us know what your list is. Let me know. You guys send me at TomGrossiComedy.com or TomGrossiComedy, all social media, see down below. Check out podcasts on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play Music, Spotify, and of course YouTube. And a big shout and thank you to all the patrons over at patreon.com/TomGrossiComedy and the YouTube members. But thank you so much for watching. I'm Tom Grossi. And as always, go Pack Go.